Joining me to discuss this is Senator John Cornyn from the Republic of Texas. Senator, appreciate you joining us today. And I just got to get your thoughts on this. Where all these individuals that are mad and they say that the decision to roll back these mandates in Texas is so awful, but yet not a single peep from these people about this policy, which now we see in these leaked documents from DHS is considered to be, quote, overwhelming to Border Patrol. They're losing all control of it. Senator, your thought on this?
Yeah, it's another case of selective outrage and double standards. I agree with you, Dana, on the mask. Anybody who wants to wear a mask can wear a mask, but there haven't been any stories, at least lately in this context, about the states that never had a mask mandate. And so it really is selective outrage. But what's happening at the border is a growing humanitarian crisis. I know the president doesn't want to admit it's a crisis. He said it's just a challenge. But we've seen this movie before, and people are coming up to the border, and because the guiding principle for the Biden administration seems to be if the Trump administration did something, we're going to do the opposite without even planning for what the consequences may be. And I feel for the Border Patrol who are doing their job along the border who have not yet been vaccinated as a priority, and no testing for people coming into the country and during a pandemic. So this is really an outrage.
Yeah, and you mentioned that we're speaking with Senator John Cornyn, and you mentioned that, Senator, how it's because of the staffing and the resources, not everyone is able to get tested. Jen Psaki was asked about this yesterday evening or late afternoon, and her response was that it's the responsibility of non-government offices and cities and localities to handle this. But this is a federal policy that has created this nightmare. And so now there were reports in Brownsville, they were running around, volunteers were trying to get any kind of testing kits. I know the state of Texas had to send them, Republic had to send them a bunch of testing kits. McAllen they're seeing this, they're being overrun. Del Rio sector is being overrun. What responsibility do you think that the federal government, if they're not going to change these policies, should they have to help out these areas that they're causing this deluge?
Yeah, if they're going to create the mess, they need to be responsible for cleaning it up. And right now they want to say other people have that responsibility, and they're standing on the sidelines. Now I realize, they're beginning to realize the folly of their position, and I read that the president's sending some of the folks from the Department of Homeland Security down to see what's happening at the border. Well, wouldn't that be nice if they'd gone down there and talked to the local communities there who've been there during the Obama administration when that humanitarian crisis was on steroids, and said, what do we need to do if we're going to change this policy, and particularly what do we need to do in a pandemic, which adds another layer of complexity on all of this. But they didn't do that. They just, despite the president's very nice rhetoric on January the 20th about healing our divisions and unifying the country, he just has proceeded so far to govern like an autocrat with one executive order after another, and now this horrendous $1.9 trillion COVID-19 bill, which is about anything else other than COVID-19.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you about next. We're speaking with Senator John Cornyn of the Republic of Texas. This bill, this relief, I'm using air quotes for this, the relief plan, 628 pages. I know that Ron Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, he was trending last night and this morning on social media because individuals were mad that he demanded a read of the whole bill. But this is considered and called accurately by many to be a blue state bailout because these states that had budget issues long before the pandemic began. Some of these were generationally caused, for instance, Illinois, they're in the red an astronomical amount. It predates the pandemic, but yet they're trying to say that because of the lockdown, and these were the states that were also the most restrictive, and that didn't help their economies, that they need this money more than other states. Doesn't it kind of almost seems like they're admitting by way of claiming that they need more money because of these restrictions that they imposed, that the other states like Florida and Texas did it correct. Tell us about this blue state bailout, Senator.
Well, if they were honest, they would admit it, Dana. But unfortunately, they're being disingenuous about this. This is, the old Rahm Emanuel statement that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. They have, under the guise of COVID-19, got this bill through. 1.9 trillion. Only about 8% of it is related to COVID-19.
Wow.
About 1% related to vaccines. This is really a Trojan horse for the kind of reckless spending and bailouts in blue states. And you correctly point out that when they see the opportunity to do this and they realize that we can do this with only Democratic votes, they're going to take the ball and run with it, and they have. But the other thing, just to remind your listeners, is we did a $600 billion bill in December, which was bipartisan. We've done 5 bipartisan bills on COVID-19. All of us, regardless of ideology or partisan affiliation, recognize that this was a crisis. But a lot of that money, a whole lot of the money that was appropriated just in December hadn't even been spent yet. And so, unfortunately, the mainstream media is not asking the questions that you're asking and others are asking. And I say bully for Ron Johnson for making the Democrats read the bill. What they hoped for is that this would pass in the dead of night and nobody would really know what's happening in light of all the other things happening in the world at the border or with Governor Cuomo. And fortunately, this is getting some real attention, and it deserves it.
I was impressed to see 6 Democrats vote no on including $15 mandatory minimum wage in this. I've been seeing some news about that, but there's a lot of stuff in this that has nothing to do with coronavirus relief. And then there was the story the other day about Democrats kind of having a little mini war with themselves because some of them had struck a deal with President Biden on, again, moving the goalposts on those checks. First it was $2,000, then they made it $1,400. Then they reduced the number of individuals to receive those $1,400 checks. So there's a number of promises that have been broken there. Senator Cornyn, how is that going to play out with the rest of the party? I mean, how are they going to maintain support at this rate?
Well, I think they're having some real problems. We voted on the budget waiver for Bernie Sanders for the minimum wage you mentioned, and there were a number of Democratic defections. I think it wasn't just Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. Yeah. And I'm sure Bernie's head is about ready to burst. But typically we have 15-minute votes in the Senate. That vote started at 11:03, and it's now 2:45 Eastern Time. And we're waiting for the next vote. They are scrambling, trying to figure out how do they hold this thing together. They can't do it unless they can muster the votes, and that means getting everybody on the Democratic side on board. And I appreciate and respect the willingness of at least some folks on the Democratic side to say, let's slow down this train a little bit. Let's not go completely crazy when it comes to spending a lot more borrowed money.
Yeah, absolutely. We're speaking with Senator John Cornyn of Texas. Senator, before I let you go, I have to ask you about the dangerous piece of legislation that is H.R. 1. How do you anticipate this? Is this going to make it through the Senate? And for those who maybe didn't hear us all talk about it earlier, this is one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation that I don't see how Republicans ever get elected again after H.R. 1. It cements mail-in ballots. It basically criminalizes the ability for states to keep intact and honest their voter rolls. It makes the public help finance campaigns. I mean, this is insane. And it passed through the House, which is not exactly a surprise. But how is it doing in the Senate?
Well, it's dead on arrival in the Senate. The only thing I would add to what you described, Dana, is the fact that it eliminates voter ID. Yes. Something that has broad bipartisan support, and that you described it accurately. This isn't really anything other than a way to for Democrats to maintain their dominance for the foreseeable future, because it so stacks the deck, and it also, I think. It basically makes impossible the sort of ballot integrity measures that are important to preserve the value of everybody's ballot by making it easy to cheat and easy to for people who shouldn't be voting to cast their vote. I got into a little bit of a Twitter war with Beto O'Rourke. The other narrative
saw.
that these guys have been spinning is they call these measures, these ballot integrity measures, voter suppression. I pointed out to Beto that in November we had almost 11 million people vote, as a historic record, including people of all colors and spectrums and ethnicities. And these people want to sell this false narrative about voter integrity measures being voter suppression. We got to really push back on that. It's really dangerous.
No, I think that's a great point. Actually, it's voter suppression to not have those protections in place, because that means anybody's vote can be canceled out. I wish
Right.
more people realize that. Senator John Cornyn, we appreciate you giving us some time today. I know we'll be talking with you again soon, and we'll watch all this play out in the Senate. Thanks so much.